Hi guys, this is a recap of season 2, episode 156 of Beyond the Gates. But before we get to the recap, if you've been to this channel or maybe you're new to the content, feel free to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. So how I like to do the recaps on this channel, I'll give you a character and then I'll explain what they're doing in the scene. The scenes that I talk about in this video may not be in the exact same order in which they aired in the episode. I like to go from my least favorite or least impactful to most favorite or most impactful scenes. And then if I have any comments or theories or anything like that, I will share those at the end of the video. So without further ado, let me tell you what these characters have been up to. So I'll start with Jacob and Naomi. Okay, Jacob and Naomi, they're at their house and they are getting ready for the day. Naomi is going to Bill's office and she's trying to, beat him there because, he's going back to work, and Jacob is, confused as to why Bill is going back to work so soon. And, Naomi says he's stubborn and she can't stop him, but she's trying to get there before he gets there. And then they have a conversation about Naomi being upset. She's upset because she feels like if Haley was a good wife, she would convince him to stay at home and just relax and recover. And Jacob tells her that, Bill is stubborn. And she's like, she knows that. And, he says that he knows something about that as well because, he's been dealing with her. And so they laugh a little bit. Then we have a moment with Eva and Isaiah. They are at Eva's condo and Eva is getting ready to go work out. And, they have this conversation about, her tops and everything again. And she brings up the scar and the fact that she can't wear the halter tops and stuff like that, the crop tops again. And Isaiah, he doesn't make any comments about it or anything like that. He just asks her if she wants coffee. And, she's confused because he's not trying to tell her that at least, well, you survived and all of that. And he just lets her know that he's trying to, be more supportive and just go, with the flow when it comes to that. He also, wants to know if she should wait a little while maybe before she goes to work out. But she says that the doctor approved her, to be able to work out. So she eventually leaves to go for her workout. Okay, so we have a moment with Bill and June. And June is coming into Bill's law office and she's actually looking for Naomi. And the reason why she's there is because she has a friend who is, going through this situation and she needs some legal advice. And so Bill offers to listen to June, but June keeps telling him that she can't afford him. And he said, at first he says he's going to give her, a discount. And then she was like, she can't even afford the discount. And so he agrees to give her a free consultation. And so they talk about her friend Lucy. Lucy is, staying in this place and they are trying to evict her. And Lucy has this autistic son. And she says she doesn't know like if Lucy's son will be able to deal with the move and, changing schools and all that stuff. And so she he tells her that Lucy, her name is not on the lease. Her mother's name was on the lease, and technically since her mother is deceased, then it's like they, it's not theirs. So June tells Bill about the people who are trying to, put her out, who owns it. And Bill actually knows, the owner. And he says that he's going to talk to Naomi because Naomi is really, really qualified in situations like that. And there's no better person to deal with it. And so, right before June leaves, he gives her his card. He actually gives her two. And he tells her to give the other one to her friend. And June says, I can't afford you and she can't afford you either. And he lets June know that, Naomi loves her. And then she is also Tyrell and Samantha's mother. And so she's like family. And so when June leaves, Bill has this smile on his face. So, he's happy that he was able to give her, some advice on a case like that. Okay, so we have this moment with Kat and Tomas, and they are in the country club and they're getting ready to have breakfast. Um, and I guess they have been in this argument about the whole Naomi situation when it comes to him, bringing Mike in and, trying to take over Naomi's case. And so uh, Kat says that, she doesn't want to go down that road again and everything. And so Kat gets a text message from her mom, and she's, agreed to be, meet with her. She has time to meet with her. And so Kat wants to go to meet with her mom because it can't wait. It's about work. And Tomas wants Kat to stay and wants her to have breakfast with him and everything. And Kat tells him, the last time we were having breakfast, you left for work. And he says, well, that was important. And she's, wants him to know that this is important to her. And, she wants him to be supportive. And so she ends up leaving him at the country club. So we have a moment with Tomas and Eva. Eva is leaving her workout, and she sees Tomas in the country club sitting alone. And she comes up to talk to him to see if he's okay and everything. And they just have this conversation about the whole Naomi situation. Tomas tells her that Kat took Naomi's side, and Eva's telling him, you've done so much work and you worked your way up, and Bill should be able to, allow you to do things, and Naomi really shouldn't be there because she doesn't work there, and it's not fair for Naomi to come in, just because she's family. Then they have a conversation about Puerto Rico. He tells her that he told his family that he hadn't talked about marriage with Kat yet because he didn't want them to look at her, see her any differently. But also he says that, he wanted her to come, but Eva says, did you tell them about the surgery and all of that? And, he tells them yes or whatever, but the questions and all that stuff that came after was the biggest part of it. They also start getting in on like personal relationship stuff, and Eva tells him, that she doesn't want to talk to him about personal relationship stuff when it comes to Kat. And so they get on other subjects. And, during this time also, Eva tells him, she got her job because she knows, the owner too is her dad. And, he tells her that, well, you worked your way up, you did this and all of that, so you earned your job. And so they also have a conversation about, Tomas working at another firm, and he tells her that he, did interviews with other firms and all of that, and they offer him a big, payout and everything, but he didn't want to start from the beginning. And so she's just spending this time encouraging him and all of that, and telling him maybe Bill will see, how hard he's working and all of that. He also during this time tells her that he would have closed Naomi's case for her and all of that. And she tells him, that one day he'll be partner, and then he can make his own decisions when it comes to, being at the law firm. Okay, so he ends up, saying he has to go to the office, and they hug, and Eva ends up leaving. But there was one moment I forgot to talk about. They had a conversation about Isaiah, and he asked about Isaiah, and she talked about how good of a man, that Isaiah is. And, he's understanding. He's so supportive. And Tomas says he wish he had something, a supportive partner or whatever. And then that's when they hug. Okay, so there's a moment with Naomi and Bill. And, okay, Naomi is finally at the law firm. And she is, coming in, and Bill is joking about, his heart and everything. And um, she tells him, that he shouldn't joke that way, and he should be relaxing and resting. He has a home office, he should be there. And he tells her, that his office is comfortable, and this is his, comfort zone and everything, and he likes working in his office. So then they have a conversation about June's case. And Naomi says, you went out and found another case so we can work on together. And he says, no, June came to me. And, he tells Naomi, all the stuff that, um, all the details and everything about the case. And Naomi says, she's going to work on it by herself. But Bill tells her that, there's nobody greater than you when it comes to the laws, when it comes to these situations like this. And I have all the connections. So working together would be better for June's case. And he wants to do some, good things before his heart gives out. And so Naomi agrees, and he says, you hate it when I'm right. And she's like, so much, I hate it when you're right. So they decide that they're going to brainstorm, on some ideas and some different things to kind of help June's friend. Then Tomas walks in, but he actually knocks this time, and Bill tells him to come in, and the first thing he sees is Naomi, and he tells Naomi that it's good seeing her. And then he overly tells Bill that he's excited about him being back at the office and all of that. And then Bill wants to know why he's there. And Tomas says we're supposed to have a discussion about some case that they're working on. And he tells Tomas that he's working on a new case with Naomi, and they're doing some brainstorming and all of that. And he wants Tomas to reschedule to after lunch. And so Tomas ends up walking out of the office, and he looks really sad and defeated. Okay, so we have a moment with Ted and Carlton. And Carlton is telling Ted about the night he had with Heather, and he met some woman. He doesn't know her name or anything like that, but he enjoyed himself. And so, Ted is, interested in the story. And then Nicole comes off the elevator, and Carlton and Ted, they stop talking. And so Carlton ends up leaving, and Ted and Nicole are together. And Ted, asks Nicole if she wants some coffee. And then they go to the little coffee station, and they are talking about Kat, because Nicole wants to know if Ted knows, why Kat wants to talk to her. And he says he doesn't, but they think it's about Tomas. And they both say that it's not that they hate Tomas, they just don't know if they like Tomas. And Nicole says that she really wants Kat to be with someone who hasn't been with both her and Eva. And so Ted agrees. Later, Ted and Nicole have a conversation, and Nicole wants to know if that, whole conversation with Ted and Carlton was about her, because she thinks it's about her, because when she walked up they stopped talking. And Ted tells her, he can assure her that Carlton is fine. That conversation wasn't about her, and she just wanted to know, as his friend, and because of everything that went down between her and Carlton, if she should go and try to talk to him, to try to smooth things over or whatever, and see how he's doing. And Ted says he can assure her that Carlton is fine. He had an active social life before he got with her, and he's pretty much moved on. And so Nicole says, you must think that I'm, kind of like full of myself and everything. And Ted says, just a little bit or whatever. And so they laugh at each other, and then Ted ends up leaving Nicole's office. Okay, so Kat finally shows up to Nicole's office, and Nicole wants to know, what she wants to talk about. And Kat gives her this update about Tomas and the Naomi situation. And Nicole says it comes off as if Tomas feels as though Naomi is not qualified for her job. And Kat tells her, that's what I was trying to tell him, and all of that, you know, it's Naomi's case pretty much. And then she Nicole wants to know if Tomas listened to Kat. And Kat says, well, I don't know if he heard me, but I know he heard Bill. And so she tells her that Naomi went to tell Bill about the situation, and Bill talked to him. And Nicole says, Bill is really, he doesn't play about his girls or whatever. And then Kat says, that's not actually, why I came in here to talk to you. I want to show you something. And so she shows her the mock-up for the purse that they made in her mom's honor. And so when Nicole looks at the purse, she, talks about how beautiful it is. And she says, I thought this was Samantha's purse and she was going to name it June. And Kat says, well, she wants to name the purse June, but they have to wait on it to be approved. But she tells her that this is not June's purse. It's actually your purse. And Nicole is, really honored, and she thinks it's so beautiful and everything. And then that's when Kat tells her about, wanting to call the bag Nikki. And Nicole is not happy with that idea because she really hates nicknames. And Kat tries to convince her that she can, reclaim that Nikki name, and the whole world will think about it as, the purse, this beautiful purse. And Nicole says that Leslie would have a field day when it comes to, this purse being called Nikki. And so she, tells her that she needs to come up with a new name. And Kat tells her, that she had been brainstorming with Isaiah. And Nicole is like, when, did you and Isaiah get so close? If you had came to me before you came to Isaiah, then you would have already known that, I wouldn't like that name. And so Kat tells her, that they've been talking or whatever. And she's like, that Eva and Isaiah would break up. And Nicole's, wondering why she thinks that they're going to break up. And Kat says, because of Eva's personality, they're bound to break up. Okay, so that's all with their interaction. And then we have a moment with Jacob and Isaiah. They're at Orphe Jean's. And then June walks in and she greets them. She says they're her favorite Hawthorne brothers. And she sees that they're waiting on their food, so she goes to get their food, and then later she brings it back. Okay, so during this time, they have a conversation. Jacob asks about Eva, and Isaiah says, he's been using the information that Jacob gave him, and also the mom has been helping him as well. He used her advice as well. And Jacob tells Isaiah, yeah, when you're dealing with a strong woman, you can't make her feel like, she's weak. And so he says he's been, listening to that and been trying to apply it, but he really wishes that, maybe she would have waited another week before she went to a workout. And then Jacob is, confused, that he took advice from their mom. And Isaiah says, well, she's been trying to be nice to Eva ever since the surgery. And he tells Jacob that he believes it's because his mom wants something in return. And Jacob wants to know what it is. And he tells him that she wants him to come to family dinner. And Isaiah, Jacob tells Isaiah, do you think she's not going to be nice to Eva if she comes to dinner? And he says, no, I think she'll be okay with that. She'll tolerate Eva or whatever for the dinner. And so Jacob thinks, okay, well, if you're not wanting to come because of the mom, then maybe it's because of the dad. And he says, he's really, our dad is really trying. He really wants a relationship. But Isaiah says it's because of the house. He says that every time he walks in that house, it's like he's a 16-year-old. And he feels like, he can't do anything right and all of that. And then they joke about their brother Luke and how, he just kind of kept his head down. He went to get his job and everything. He's in Detroit. And so, they say that he was smart. But Jacob also tells Isaiah, you've changed, and the parents know that he's changed and everything, and they are really trying. And Jacob says that Isaiah should, give them the benefit of the doubt as well and try. So later on, Kat walks into Orphe Jean's and she sees Jacob and Isaiah, and she wants to thank Jacob for what he did for Chelsea when it comes to the whole Allison situation. And Jacob says that they found the phone that Allison was using to call Chelsea, and that Chelsea should be, okay and everything when it comes to that situation. And so Kat is, happy. She says Chelsea cannot work and not have to think about, Allison right now. And so Isaiah tells Kat to sit down, and so she sits, and then Jacob tells Kat that he's proud of her because, she came to him for, to do the work instead of trying to start up an investigation on her own. And so Isaiah jokes about Kat being a future lawyer or, a future police officer, and Jacob is like, no, don't get her started. And then Jacob gets a call, he has to leave. And then it leaves Isaiah and Kat, and they both say, okay, so I guess it's just you and me. So Kat ends up ordering pancakes because she didn't, get to have breakfast with Tomas earlier. And she, lets him know that her mom hated the name, when it comes to the purse. And so Isaiah says, well, we can brainstorm and come up with a new name because, Kat wants to have the name already done and have things, the promotion and everything done, because I think it's due like in a month. And so Isaiah comes up with, all these superhero names, and then he gets to Vixen, and Kat just starts laughing because she was like, can you imagine my mom would be okay with, a purse that's in her honor named Vixen? And so they both start laughing. And then Eva walks in and she sees them and she has this confused look on her face. Okay, so that's all for this episode, but I do have a lot of things that I want to talk about. The whole situation with Kat and Isaiah, I hope they are not trying to push a relationship or Kat liking Isaiah on us. We've already went through this situation with Tomas and Eva. I don't want us to go back down this road. I do want Kat to have a Hawthorne brother, but I'm hoping that Luke is actually getting ready to be on the show because they keep bringing his name up in conversation. Like, it's been some episodes lately and they've just been bringing his name up, talking about stories and everything about him. And since, they talked about the family dinner, maybe he'll come home for that and then we'll get to see him. But that's the one that I would like for Kat to be with and not Isaiah. I don't want another sister situation between her and Eva. But I do like that they are close. Kat did actually know Isaiah before, Eva even came to town. So I can understand them having a cordial relationship. But I do not want, just like I wouldn't want her to be with Jacob, I don't want her to be with Isaiah either. Also, hearing that Ted and Nicole are not really feeling Tomas, and hearing them express that, I feel like we're getting closer and closer to Tomas and Kat actually calling it quits. Because one, he already, has to take up for the fact that they're not engaged yet when it comes to his family. He feels like she's not supportive of his dream. She took her family side over him. And, he feels like, almost like Eva is more supportive of him and he misses their conversations. She also brought up the fact of him working at another law firm. So I don't know if that's something Tomas is going to end up doing. So I just feel like Kat is actually, as well feeling like he's not as supportive of her, as she is of him. So I see them kind of calling it quits. I don't know who's going to break up with who or if it's going to be mutual, but I see them, in this season sometime calling it quits. But like I said, I do not want Isaiah and Kat situation. Um, with Naomi and Bill, I like the fact that Bill, since he's been sick, he has a case now that it just makes him feel good. So that's why I feel like Naomi is going to work out of his office, but she's going to do more of those type of cases. So she's going to end up working with Bill, but it's going to be more of their pro bono type cases and everything. And just like in another episode, a previous episode, when Anita and Vernon were talking about, Naomi possibly working for Bill, Vernon says that she would have more resources and she would be able to do more for her clients and everything if she worked, at Bill's firm. So I see that coming in the future as well. But that's all I have for today's video, for this recap. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you later.